Picture yourself standing outside a gathering where everyone inside seems to be laughing effortlessly, talking freely, belonging without trying. You want to walk through that door more than almost anything. Your chest aches with the desire to be part of it, to connect, to finally feel like you fit somewhere. But as your hand reaches for the door handle, something happens. Your heart starts pounding. Your mind floods with images of awkward silences, judgmental stares, and the inevitable moment when everyone realizes you don't belong there. The fear becomes so intense that you convince yourself you never really wanted to go anyway. You turn around, go home, and spend the evening alone, feeling both relieved and devastated. This isn't just shyness or introversion. This is avoidant personality, a psychological pattern that keeps people trapped between their deepest longing for connection and their most powerful fear of rejection. Understanding this pattern means understanding one of the most painful contradictions of human experience. How someone can simultaneously be starving for intimacy while running from it at every opportunity. The psychology of avoidant personality lives in a space that most people find hard to comprehend because it seems to defy basic human nature. We understand that people need connection. We know that loneliness hurts. So when someone consistently avoids social situations, declines invitations, keeps conversations superficial, and maintains emotional distance, the natural assumption is that they simply prefer solitude or don't value relationships. This interpretation couldn't be further from the truth. People with avoidant personality patterns don't lack the desire for connection, they experience it with an intensity that can feel overwhelming. What they also experience, with equal or greater intensity, is terror at the prospect of being truly seen, known, and potentially rejected. The avoidance isn't indifference. It is self-protection against what feels like an existential threat. To understand how someone arrives at this psychological place, we need to look at the belief system that underpins avoidant personality. At its foundation sits a cluster of beliefs about the self that sound something like this: I am fundamentally inadequate. There is something wrong with me at my core. If people really knew who I am, they would find me disappointing, boring, or repulsive. I am less than others, not as interesting, not as capable, not as worthy of love and acceptance. These aren't beliefs that someone consciously chooses. They don't wake up one day and decide to think these thoughts. Instead, these beliefs typically form gradually through repeated experiences, usually beginning in childhood, where the developing mind learns something painful about vulnerability, authenticity, and connection. The experiences that contribute to avoidant patterns vary, but they share common themes. Imagine a child who expresses excitement about something they've created, maybe a drawing or a story, only to have a parent respond with criticism about how it could be better, or worse, with indifference. This happens once, twice, 100 times. The child begins to learn that showing who they are and what they care about leads to pain. Or consider a child who cries when hurt and is told they're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. Emotions become dangerous, something to hide rather than express. Perhaps the child grows up in a household where love feels conditional, where acceptance depends on achievement, perfect behavior, or meeting impossible standards. The child learns to perform rather than to be authentic. But the performance never feels good enough, and underneath grows the belief that the real self, the imperfect self, is unacceptable. Traumatic social experiences often play a significant role as well. Being bullied, publicly humiliated, or socially excluded creates emotional wounds that can last decades. The memory of being laughed at, mocked for your interests, or rejected by a group you desperately wanted to join, becomes etched into emotional memory. Years later, even though the circumstances have completely changed, the nervous system still reacts to social situations as if that trauma might happen again at any moment. The brain, which is fundamentally designed to keep us safe, becomes hypervigilant in exactly the contexts where we most want to relax and be ourselves. It is also important to understand that some people are simply born with more sensitive nervous system. This isn't weakness or deficiency, it is natural human variation in temperament. Some children are more reactive to stimuli, feel emotions more intensely, process experiences more deeply, and need more time to recover from stimulation. There is nothing wrong with this temperament, but when a highly sensitive child grows up in an environment that doesn't understand or value sensitivity, or worse, that criticizes it, the risk of developing avoidant patterns increases significantly. The sensitive child feels criticism cut deeper, remembers rejection more vividly, and finds social situations more overwhelming, all of which can lead to a protective strategy of avoidance. What makes avoidant personality particularly persistent and difficult to change is that it creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The mechanism at work here is something psychologists call confirmatory bias, which is the mind's tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information in ways that confirm pre-existing beliefs. When you fundamentally believe that you are inadequate and that people will reject you if they really know you, your mind becomes a detective looking for evidence that this belief is true. You have a conversation at work that goes reasonably well, but you focus entirely on the one awkward pause or the moment when someone glanced at their phone, interpreting these neutral events as proof that the person found you boring. Someone gives you a genuine compliment, but you immediately dismiss it as politeness, pity, or manipulation, unable to accept it as real. A friend doesn't text back immediately, and your mind jumps to the conclusion that they're annoyed with you or losing interest, rather than considering the dozens of innocuous reasons someone might not respond right away. This confirmatory bias wouldn't be so damaging if the person was still actively engaging in social situations and relationships, because then they'd also encounter experiences that contradict their negative beliefs. But here is where the avoidance becomes its own trap. By consistently avoiding social situations, declining opportunities for deeper connection, ending conversations before they get too personal, and keeping people at a distance, the person never gets the corrective experiences they need. They never discover that most people are far too preoccupied with their own concerns to judge others as harshly as feared. They never learn that vulnerability, rather than driving people away, often draws them closer and creates intimacy. They never experience that rejection, while painful, is survivable and doesn't actually confirm their worthlessness, but rather reflects compatibility, circumstance, or the other person's issue. The avoidance creates immediate relief, which is precisely why it persists. When you are feeling intense anxiety about a social event and you decide not to go, there is an immediate drop in distress. Your nervous system calms down. The racing thoughts quiet. You feel safe again. This relief is powerful, and it teaches your brain that avoidance is the solution to anxiety. This is basic behavioral conditioning. Any behavior that successfully reduces discomfort gets reinforced and becomes more likely to occur in the future. So each time someone with avoidant patterns chooses safety over connection, they're actually strengthening the neural pathways that associate avoidance with protection and social engagement with danger. The pattern becomes more automatic, more ingrained, more difficult to override, even when the person consciously wants to change. To truly understand what is happening psychologically, we need to look at the neurobiology underlying avoidant personality. When someone with this pattern anticipates or enters a social situation, their brain's threat detection system activates as if approaching actual danger. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that serves as an alarm system for threats, lights up with activity. This triggers what is known as the sympathetic nervous system response, the fight-or-flight mechanism that prepares the body to deal with danger, heart rate increases, pumping blood to major muscle groups. Breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Muscles tense, palms sweat. The digestive system slows down, pupils dilate. The person might feel dizzy, nauseous, or experience a sense of unreality. This is not someone choosing to be anxious or being dramatic. This is their nervous system responding to what it has learned through repeated experiences to perceive as a genuine threat. The fascinating and frustrating aspect of this is that the thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, might know rationally that there is no real danger. The person can tell themselves that nothing bad will actually happen at this dinner party or during this phone call, but the emotional brain, the limbic system where the amygdala resides, operates much faster than the thinking brain and doesn't respond well to logic. It responds to learned associations and patterns. If past experiences have taught it that social situations equal pain, humiliation, or rejection, it will continue triggering alarm responses, regardless of what the rational mind knows. Over time, these neural pathways become deeply ingrained. Every time the amygdala activates in response to social situations and the person avoids them, experiencing relief, the pathway gets reinforced. Neurons that fire together wire together, as neuroscientists say. The brain becomes increasingly efficient at producing this response, which is why avoidant patterns can feel so automatic and uncontrollable as time goes on. The person isn't making a conscious choice to feel terrified. Their nervous system is running a program that was installed through experience and reinforced through repetition. Living with avoidant personality means navigating daily life while carrying this internal psychological structure. The way it manifests varies depending on the person and the severity of their patterns, but certain themes emerge consistently. In romantic relationships, avoidance creates particular challenges because intimacy requires exactly what feels most dangerous, being fully seen and known by another person. Someone with avoidant patterns might find themselves attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable because these relationships feel safer. There is less risk of being truly vulnerable if the other person isn't capable of or interested in deep intimacy either. Alternatively, they might enter relationships but maintain invisible walls, keeping certain parts of themselves hidden, never quite letting their partner all the way in. There is often a pattern of getting close to someone up to a certain point and then pulling back or sabotaging the relationship when it threatens to become too intimate. This might look like picking fights, becoming emotionally cold or distant, developing sudden doubts about the relationship, or finding deal-breaker flaws in the partner. From the outside, it seems confusing or hurtful. From the inside, it is a protection mechanism activating when vulnerability reaches a threshold that feels unbearable. The person might consciously want the relationship, but unconsciously cannot tolerate the level of emotional exposure it requires. After the relationship ends, often through their own sabotage, they experience genuine grief and loneliness, confused by their own behavior, but unable to stop the pattern from repeating. Friendships present similar challenges, but in different ways. There might be many acquaintances, but few or no close friends. The person can be pleasant, even charming in casual interactions, but they consistently decline invitations to deepen the connection. Coffee invitations get turned down. Text conversations remain surface level. Attempts by others to learn more about them get deflected with questions that turn attention back to the other person. Over time, people stop trying, not because they dislike the person, but because they interpret the consistent distance as a lack of interest. This creates a painful irony. The person desperately wants close friendships, but their protective behaviors communicate exactly the opposite message, leading others to conclude they prefer being alone. The work environment offers its own complications. Someone with avoidant personality might be highly competent at their job, but avoid any positions or tasks that require significant social interaction or visibility. They might turn down promotions that would mean giving presentations, leading teams, or representing the company externally. They might be the person who never speaks up in meetings, even when they have valuable insights, because the prospect of all those eyes on them feels intolerable. Performance reviews, even positive ones, might trigger intense anxiety because receiving feedback, even praise, requires being seen and evaluated. The person might significantly underachieve relative to their abilities simply because their capabilities remain hidden behind their avoidance. The emotional landscape of avoidant personality is characterized by constant vigilance and exhausting self-monitoring. Social interactions, even positive ones, require tremendous energy because there is a part of the mind continuously analyzing everything. How did that sentence come out? Was that joke appropriate? Why did they make that facial expression? Do they think I am boring? Every word, gesture, and pause gets scrutinized in real time and then replayed afterward in excruciating detail. After a social interaction, particularly one that went reasonably well, there is often an intense period of rumination. The person reviews the entire encounter like reviewing film footage, identifying every mistake, every awkward moment, every potential sign that they were judged negatively. This post-interaction analysis can last for hours or even days, turning what should have been an enjoyable experience into a source of ongoing anxiety. The anticipatory anxiety before social events can be equally intense or worse. Days before a party, dinner, or meeting, the person's mind begins generating detailed scenarios of potential disaster. They imagine forgetting someone's name, saying something offensive, having nothing to contribute to conversations, or being visibly anxious in ways that others will notice and judge. By the time the event arrives, they've already lived through dozens of imagined versions of it going wrong. This anticipatory anxiety is exhausting and often leads to last-minute cancellations, which provide immediate relief but reinforce the cycle and add guilt and shame to the emotional mix. Underneath all of this sits a harsh internal critic that provides running commentary on every perceived flaw and failure. This critic serves a psychological function within the avoidance system. The logic, unconscious though it may be, goes something like this: if I criticize myself first and maintain low expectations, then criticism or rejection from others will hurt less because I already believe those things about myself. It is a form of preemptive emotional damage control. But this internal critic doesn't actually provide protection. It inflicts continuous damage to self-esteem and makes it even harder to take the risks necessary for connection. The chronic loneliness that accompanies avoidant personality often leads to depression. This makes perfect sense when you consider that humans are fundamentally social creatures who suffer when isolated from meaningful connection. The depression adds another layer to the avoidance because it saps energy and motivation, making it even harder to engage socially even when opportunities arise. There is often a sense of hopelessness that things could ever be different, a resignation to a life of distance and disconnection. Anxiety is nearly always present, whether at clinical levels or as a constant background hum of worry. Some people develop additional coping mechanisms to manage these feelings, which might include substances, compulsive behaviors, or immersion in online worlds, where connection feels less threatening. One of the most painful aspects of avoidant personality is the awareness of what is being missed. The person often has a vivid imagination and can clearly picture the life they wish they had: close friendships, intimate romantic relationships, a sense of belonging, ease in social situations. They can see other people living this way, especially in the carefully curated worlds of social media, which makes the contrast with their own lived experience even more stark. This gap between the imagined, desired life and the actual life creates a profound sense of grief and loss. They're mourning a life they've never gotten to live, experiences they've never had, connections that never formed. What makes this particularly tragic is that people with avoidant personality often possess exactly the qualities that would make them wonderful friends, partners, and colleagues. The sensitivity that makes rejection hurt so deeply also often brings exceptional empathy and ability to understand others' emotions. The tendency toward introspection creates depth of thought and interesting perspectives. The caution around connection means that when they do let someone in, they're often remarkably loyal and committed. But these strengths remain largely hidden behind the protective walls of avoidance, seen by few, if anyone. The very qualities that could facilitate connection become, through the distorted lens of fear, additional vulnerabilities to be protected. From the outside, avoidant behavior can be misinterpreted in multiple ways. It might look like arrogance or aloofness, as if the person thinks they're too good for others. Family members or acquaintances might perceive them as cold, unfriendly, or selfish. In reality, the opposite is usually true. The avoidance stems from feeling less than others, inadequate, unworthy. The person who seems aloof at a party isn't thinking, "These people aren't good enough for me," but rather, "I am not good enough for these people, and they'll figure that out if I try to engage." This misunderstanding can lead to social consequences that further reinforce the person's beliefs, creating another vicious cycle. It is important to recognize that avoidant personality exists on a spectrum of severity. Some people have mild avoidant tendencies that cause some discomfort and create some limitations, but don't prevent them from maintaining relationships, holding jobs, and living relatively functional lives. They might have some social anxiety, prefer smaller gatherings to large parties, or take longer to open up to people. But they're still able to form connections and engage when necessary. Others experience avoidance so severe that they become almost completely isolated, struggling to maintain any kind of employment, having no close relationships, and experiencing significant impairment across all areas of life. Most people with avoidant patterns fall somewhere in the middle of this spectrum. An interesting pattern is that many people with avoidant personality can function reasonably well in structured settings where expectations and roles are clearly defined. At work, where there is a script for how to interact, what topics to discuss, and what behaviors are appropriate, they might manage fine. It is in unstructured social settings, where they have to navigate ambiguity and where their whole self, rather than just their role, is exposed, that the difficulties become most apparent. Understanding where someone falls on this spectrum matters because it informs what kind of help might be most beneficial and what realistic goals might look like. The question that matters most to anyone living with avoidant personality is whether change is possible. Can someone who has spent years or decades avoiding connection learn to move toward it instead? Can the deeply ingrained belief systems shift? Can the nervous system learn new responses? The answer, supported by both research and clinical experience, is yes. These patterns, while stubborn and deeply rooted, are not permanent sentences. They developed through experience, which means they can change through new experiences. This doesn't happen quickly or easily, and it requires genuine courage and usually support. But it is possible. The journey toward change typically begins with awareness and understanding. This means coming to see the pattern clearly, recognizing how fear of rejection drives avoidant behavior, understanding the underlying beliefs about self-worth and others' judgment, and identifying how the avoidance, while providing short-term relief, creates long-term suffering and prevents the disconfirming experiences needed. This awareness doesn't itself create change, but it is an essential foundation. You cannot change patterns you don't recognize or understand. From this foundation of awareness, the work involves gradually approaching rather than avoiding what feels threatening. This has to be done carefully and incrementally. Forcing someone into overwhelmingly anxiety-provoking situations doesn't help and can actually reinforce the fear by confirming that social situations feel unbearable. Instead, change happens through what therapists call graduated exposure, starting with situations that produce manageable levels of anxiety and gradually increasing the challenge as confidence builds. This might start with something as simple as making eye contact with the cashier, progressing to brief small talk, then to accepting a low-stakes social invitation, slowly building new neural pathways that associate connection with safety and reward rather than danger and pain. Alongside behavioral change, addressing the underlying beliefs about worthiness and acceptability is crucial. These beliefs, formed early and reinforced over years, feel like truth rather than interpretation. The work here involves learning to recognize these beliefs as beliefs rather than facts, examining the evidence for and against them, and considering alternative interpretations of experiences. If someone believes they're fundamentally unlikable but can identify people who genuinely seem to enjoy their company, there is a contradiction that deserves exploration. Various therapy approaches help with this cognitive work, including cognitive behavioral therapy, schema therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy, each offering frameworks for examining and shifting core beliefs. Perhaps most importantly, developing self-compassion helps transform the harsh internal environment that maintains avoidant patterns. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience you would offer a good friend who was struggling. It means recognizing that everyone makes social mistakes, has moments of awkwardness, and experiences rejection sometimes. It means understanding that your fear makes sense given your history rather than proving you are weak or broken. Research shows that self-compassion actually increases the capacity to take social risks because it reduces the fear that mistakes will be catastrophic or that rejection will confirm worthlessness. Building new patterns also requires relationships that feel safe enough to practice vulnerability. This might happen in therapy with a skilled, compassionate therapist who provides a relationship where being authentic doesn't lead to judgment or rejection. It might happen with a particularly patient and understanding friend or partner who can tolerate the push-pull dynamics that often occur as someone with avoidant patterns learns to tolerate closeness. These relationships become laboratories where new experiences can emerge, where the person can discover that being truly seen doesn't always lead to abandonment, and where repair can happen after inevitable ruptures. For those who care about someone with avoidant personality patterns, understanding what is happening beneath the surface can transform frustration into compassion. When your friend consistently cancels plans at the last minute, it helps to know they're not flaky or inconsiderate, but overwhelmed by anxiety they struggle to manage. When your partner maintains emotional walls around certain topics or parts of their life, it helps to understand they're not withholding out of lack of love, but because vulnerability feels terrifying based on what they learned about relationships long ago. When your family member seems distant or disengaged at gatherings, it helps to recognize they're not selfish, but rather struggling with fear of judgment that makes being present extraordinarily difficult. Supporting someone with avoidant patterns requires patience, consistency, and a willingness to not take their behavior personally. It means continuing to offer invitations even when they're often declined, because each invitation communicates you are wanted. Here, even if they can't accept. It means allowing them to open up at their own pace rather than pushing for intimacy they're not ready for. It means understanding that their journey toward connection will be slow and non-linear with progress and setbacks. Most importantly, it means providing experiences of acceptance that contradict their belief that being truly known leads to rejection. If you recognize yourself in this description of avoidant personality, the most important thing to understand is that your fear makes sense given what you've experienced. And your desire for connection is not only natural but reflects something essential about being human. You are not broken or fundamentally flawed, even though those beliefs feel utterly true. You developed a way of protecting yourself that made sense at the time, and now that protection has become a limitation. The work ahead isn't about forcing yourself to be someone you are not or white-knuckling your way through anxiety. It is about slowly, gently building new experiences that can teach your nervous system something different. That connection, while it will always involve some vulnerability and risk, also offers something profoundly nourishing that isolation cannot provide. It is about learning that you can survive uncomfortable feelings, that rejection reflects compatibility or circumstance rather than your worth, and that there are people in this world who will genuinely appreciate you for who you are, imperfections included. The journey from avoidance to connection is neither quick nor straightforward. There will be setbacks, moments of overwhelming fear, times when retreating to old patterns feels like the only option. But every small step you take toward showing up, toward letting yourself be seen, toward risking vulnerability despite the fear, is an act of profound courage that rewires both brain and heart. And the possibility of eventually feeling at home both within yourself and in connection with others, of experiencing the intimacy and belonging you've longed for, remains real and reachable, waiting patiently on the other side of fear, for when you are ready to take those first frightening steps toward it.